Hey guys, it's Cameron for Taboo, episode 3, and let's get into this episode because, as you guys know, I have been very up and down with the show so far. I really liked episode 1. I thought it was a very good introduction to this series. I genuinely thought that was a great introduction and gave us some very compelling characters and storylines. And then episode 2, while it still had that interesting stuff in there, it got very weird. I thought way too much happened in that episode, and I still stick by that, and because of that, this episode is the exact opposite of what the show shouldn't be. This episode was slow, it was boring, almost nothing happened, and it just was so sluggish to get through, and is probably by far the worst of the bunch, I have to say. It had some truly cringy dialogue, some really dumb scenes throughout it, but let's just get into it because I really don't have a ton to say about this episode. Most of this episode are characters interacting and about pointless shits and going on for like 5-minute exposition scenes, and if not that, it's like they're negotiating and just not at all what the show needs to be, but let's just get right into it. And while I found this episode quite boring, I actually did like the way the beginning started, because we see the morning after his stabbing, we see Delaney's would-be assassin washes up in the dead on the shore with a group of children, ready to plunder his belongings, and we see Winter is among all the children, so I guess we now know that Winter is not a figment of Delaney's imagination and is in fact real, and this I just didn't really understand how she got there, and the show doesn't really take the time to understand, but it was a good opening, and it's probably because it's like one of the only interesting things that happens in this episode, because Delaney wakes up with the American spy, Dr. Dumbarton, sewing up his wound, and amidst their conversation, Dumbarton reveals that he's checked up on Delaney's story, and vouched that he has a connection with another American spy. Like I've talked about before, Delaney very well could be working for America, but again, that's something that we don't really talk a lot about. Delaney answers back by demanding an audience with Thomas Jefferson to make his offer for the exchange to gain control of Nootka Sound, and he doesn't want money, but instead a monopoly on the fur and tea trade to China, which would obviously reignite his family's once flourishing and now floundering shipping company. And now that we know that's what he wants, it makes this much more uninteresting. I mean, now he just wants a shipping company, and that's really all he wants. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Where this is really going. You know, to me, it seemed like he wanted to just make sure that it was still in his family's name. That's simple enough. I don't know why they have to make things more complicated, because when you make things more complicated, it really does lose me. But Dumbarton balks at the offer at first, but will gladly pass along the message, and he returns home and tells Brace to prepare the house for a siege of sorts, with seemingly everyone in England out for his blood. He wants to make his house his one place of safety, which I did think this made a lot of sense why he did this. He orders the windows boarded up with no one gaining entry except those people he trusts. And, yeah, I mean, that definitely would be the right thing to do. You know, everyone is after him. Ever since he's arrived, everyone has treated him like absolute shit, and he needs to do whatever he does to ensure that he's safe. So his next stop takes him to his father's attorney, Thoit, who draws up a last will and testament before sending a copy to the East India Company. And Delaney can't be for certain who sent an assassin after him, but he's fairly sure it's the East India Company. So his will sends a very strong message about these continued efforts. Now, we know, of course, that, you know, he knows that there was an assassin, and that Thoit is, of course, not Thoit, Thorn is the man with the silver tooth, but in his will, Delaney says in the event of his death, all of his possessions and lands are to be handed over to the United States of America. And that leaves East India in a very precarious position, because we know that Stewart notes that not only can they not kill Delaney, but it is in their best interest to make sure that he stays alive, because the one place that they don't want these goods to go, that's where Delaney wants to send them, is to America. And of course, the Americas could find out, kill him to gain control of Nootka Sound, but Delaney seems less threatened by them than the growing numbers of enemies in England right now, which is, again, makes us think that Delaney very well is a spy. And it's another example of how annoyingly subtle the show is being at that, because it's very obvious what's going on. I don't know why the show won't just reveal it, because it's kind of annoying. Now, speaking of Stuart Strange, I know I've praised Jonathan Pryce in the show, but his stuff had to be the most boring. I mean, I honestly did not give a shit about what was going on with them throughout most of this episode, but he requests an audience with Solomon Coop, the right-hand man to the Prince Regent and servant to King George, and Stuart means to tell Coop about Delaney's plans to hand over Nootka Sound to the Americans, but the royal employee already knows about it. So he then informs Stuart that he knows everything, including Delaney's bargaining price to give the Nootka Sound to England. He wants all the the fur trading rights, which would put a major dent in the East Company's business, and it's clear that Delaney's willing to get rid of this land, so long as it costs the East India Company more than they could ever afford to lose. And again, I care a lot more about this if I gave a shit about any of the members in the East India Company, which I do not. The show has not taken one single pause. They've not paused at all once to get us to know any of these characters. They haven't done the work required to do that, and because that, I don't care about the East India Company. I really don't. I don't care if they succeed. I don't care if they fail. They're just a plot device at this point. Stuart Strange is a menacing villain, but he's just a plot device, and they're not really doing anything else with them. And again, they might have time to do that, but they only have 5 episodes left. And Coop then tells Stuart that perhaps they can both win. However, when he reveals that Delaney may soon have a fight on his hands for the right of the Nuka Sound, thanks to his reluctantly revealed stepmother, Lorna, who's made a claim to half of everything he owns after his shadowy marriage to his father during his last days. So, it really does not seem to be going well for the East India Company, and James continues to plot to take over the trading routes in Nuka Sound. His madness still haunts him daily, and that is one of the most annoying things about this episode, is constantly he's seeing visions of, again, slaves and ghosts, and we've been over this. It's really annoying. There's this ridiculous scene where he's at home. He breaks into the room where his mother once stayed before being drawn to a fireplace. He uncovers this mysterious symbol carved in the back wall. He doesn't know what it means, but he shows Brace that after he was captured on the slave ship bound for Africa, he woke up with the same symbol carved into his back, and with his mother in his mind, he also reached out to another family member, and again, I just didn't care. I don't care about the same symbol carved in his back. I don't care about any of this, but he does reach out to Zilpha, who, this is the episode where Zilpha gets a little bit more to do, but still, she remains to just be a plot device. She's not really a character, and he's still trying to convince to return him as a lover rather than a sibling. So the two of them exchange letters for several weeks as Delaney lays out his plans to conquer the East India Company and relaunch the Delaney Shipping Company, while Zilpha shuts him down at every turn. And you don't know if she's actually doing this because she wants to, or if she's doing this because Thorne's telling her to. And this felt quite out of character for Zilpha. I mean, we've known that Zilpha kind of wants to be a little bit more generous to Delaney. She actually kind of wants to be nice to him, but, Thorne is, kind of making her relinquish any of that care she has for him. And basically, she finally declares if he doesn't stop writing, she'll just burn the letters before reading them. But Delaney did the same exact thing to her in episode 1, so I don't know why he's threatened by this. He did the same exact thing to her. Hell, why is he even writing her letters? I mean, he burnt the damn thing in episode 1. This doesn't make any sense. And, of course, Zilpha's still drawn to her brother after sending him another letter to meet in a church, where she straddles his lap, gives him a passionate kiss, and afterwards she declares this is the last time they will ever see each other, to which Delaney responds that she's solely mistaken. So we now know that there is definitely some incest stuff going on between these two. It doesn't make it more interesting. It just makes things more weird, and if that's what the show's trying to do, it's really succeeding. It's really failing horribly, I have to say. So now we get to, by far, the worst scene of this entire episode, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of laughed at this. I mean, this was ridiculous. James receives a visit from Thorne, and this scene, it's supposed to be somewhat intense because obviously Delaney knows that Thorne is the one that is the man with the silver tooth and is taking everything in him not to kill him. What we find out about Thorne, it's supposed to be shocking, but it really is just so overly dramatic. And this actor in general, he's just so bland. There's nothing about him. He offers up his services as an insurance provider to the new ship he purchased before quickly being turned down. Thorne's rejection then puts him on the offensive to piss Delaney off as much as possible, and he reveals he knows all about Zilpha and Delaney's previous relationship, and now he punishes his wife on a nightly basis with some of the roughest sex he's ever engaged in, basically as a recourse, and he doesn't flinch, but it's clear he's holding back with everything inside not to slit his brother-in-law's throat. And again, it's supposed to be this intense scene, but instead it doesn't really do anything. It just really makes things more awkward, and we then get the worst scene of the episode, which was actually laughable, where Thorne is taunting Zilpha before going on a rant about discovering that she's gotten her period again this month. Thorne wants to put a baby in her, yet Zilpha's body's not cooperating. It's making him rather agitated, and I can understand, obviously, he wants an heir and everything, and back then, that was very important, but the line that he said about the oranges, that had me dying, where he said, "Don't worry about the fucking oranges." That was probably the funniest line in this entire episode. I do not give a shit about Thorne and Zilpha, honestly. The show wants me to, but I just can't find the care to, I can't find a reason to care about them, honestly. Thorne is just a controlling husband, and Zilpha is someone who just kind of goes along with it. There's no sort of, independence in her. There's no sort of her putting her foot down. You don't really get a sense of who these two are. And if this is the way of the show trying to develop them, again, it's not really working at all because I just can't find a single reason or anything compelling about these characters. I want to, but so far the show's not giving me anything to work with, and that really does suck when they're two of the main characters of this show. So Delaney has handsomely paid several people around town, including his bloodthirsty buddy Atticus, to watch his back while he maneuvers around the vile business and political world in London, and now he looks to add another person to his inner circle, but this one will be paid by blackmail rather than money. So he visits this gay brothel where all the men are dressed as women, and is there he discovers an old friend, Godfrey. Now, this was interesting. I will definitely admit, this part of the episode I was a little bit interested in. It's the only thing, there are two things in this episode that actually make me not completely dislike it. These two things I found a little bit interesting. Godfrey's actually the man tasked with keeping the minutes in all the East India Company's meetings, and he doubles as a prostitute in this brothel, and it seems that Delaney recognized him right away when he met with the East India Company because they were classmates once upon a time, and then he found Godfrey's extracurricular activity. So it's clear that these two have had some sort of interaction before. They've known each other for a long time, and Delaney agrees to keep Godfrey's secret so long as he doesn't keep anything hidden about the East India Company meetings, and basically, he's going to make sure that he doesn't let anyone know he's a prostitute. Godfrey will report everything back to Delaney, and in exchange he will protect his old schoolmate from any potential harm that could come to him, and before leaving, Godfrey admits that he was actually in love with Delaney when they were children, but now he's serving him in secret while hoping that the East Indian Company never finds out about it. So I do find this quite interesting, that they actually have this character here. I like Godfrey as a character overall. I think that I like the direction that he's going, and this is how you get me to care about a member of the East India Company. This is the only character in the East India Company that's actually a character, and not just some tyrant or some, very vile man that's working in this company. This is actually a character that we have, and this really made me happy, and I wish the rest of the episode was as developed as the relation between Delaney and Godfrey is. There's so many places they can go with this, and I'm very interested in seeing where this relationship is going to go. I like that we were introduced to this character. I like the direction they're going with that. That is what the show should be. And the good thing is the other part of the episode I actually do like. Where they're going with Lorna, I actually really do like her as a character. I think Jessie Buckley is quite good as this character, and when we see Delaney returns from a visit with his sister, he finds his stepmother, Lorna, has made herself at home, and of course Brace is ready to use one of the guns James has purchased as protection from his new pal Atticus to shoot her, but Delaney actually has other plans, because Lorna tells Delaney that she's happy to hand over her claim to the Nuka Sound if he will give up the house, and we know that, they made an agreement that these two would not interact a lot, but she's already disobeying that, and at the moment Delaney realizes that she's not trying to manipulate him for the value of the land, but her potential claim to have the Delaney estate makes her a valuable bargaining chip for the British, for the East India Company, and the Americans as well. So instead of kicking her out, he actually offers her a place to stay inside the house. Clearly, he's trying to use her as bait. I'm assuming, at least. I think he's trying to bait her, and later that night, she declares she's going back to work as an actress at a local playhouse, and there's this great scene where she's doing whatever she can to perform this scene, but the crowd very much is not liking it. They're very much out of it, and he disagrees because if she's out in the open, she is in fact a target. And yeah, that's definitely true. She is a target, and she still insists, so Delaney follows her to work in a carriage of his own, and following the abrupt conclusion of her play due to a riled-up crowd, she's picked up by a woman in a carriage who claims to be a fan, and it seems most of the actors in this particular playhouse also double as prostitutes, and this woman has been promised that Lorna will gladly participate in a threesome along with her husband, the Duke of Richmond. Now, this ending makes no sense to me. I mean, I get that Lorna's supposed to be somewhat of an independent woman who's very, she makes herself known, but this was ridiculous. This was as ridiculous as Delaney being a cannibal. She refuses, but soon encounters the Duke, who isn't willing to take no for an answer. She swipes at him with her knife, immediately earns her as a death sentence for the Duke, and suddenly a gunshot rings out. James appears from the shadows to rescue Lorna from the Duke's clutches. He whisks her away, but now knows that the East India Company was behind this entire entire setup, again, probably to bait her and get Delaney possibly killed. So Lorna was lured into the trap, and her would-be perpetrators knew that she would resist the Duke, which would result in his harm, thus making her a fugitive. So now Delaney is convinced that he must protect Lorna because she could ultimately hold the key to his chances of bargaining the Nuka Sound to secure his family's future, and he has to do whatever he can to make sure she's safe, because that could be his only chance to, really make sure this is his family's future. She's actually interested in that. He now has a reason to work with her, and that is the way this extremely messy, slow episode ends. But let's just get into it and where I think we're really gonna go. So overall, apart from like 2 plots, this episode was so ostensibly boring, I have to say. I mean, there really was not a ton going on here that I really could find myself latching onto. There were maybe 1 or 2 things that I really liked, but the show really is starting to lose me, I have to say. And it's not because the show is bad. I don't want you guys to think the show is horrible. It's not. The problem is, it is completely missing its potential, and it's not at all realizing what it needs to do and what really it needs to do to meet the requirements that it needs. Things like Lorna and where they're going with that storyline is something that I am intrigued in. And I like that Lorna is actually not against Delaney. She actually does want her half of the company. And one of the thing is that they're going to try to split it. Delaney's trying to clearly, he's trying to compromise with her. He's trying to get her on his side. But now he has to protect her because he knows the East India Company is going after her as well. So this gives him a reason to find a way to relinquish some of his family's fortune. Because if he dies, he can give that money to Lorna. And in a way, it will still be Delaney, because what does she call herself? Mrs. Delaney. So yeah, she will do whatever she can to make sure that this stays in her family's reach. And I like the direction that that's going. I like the way these two do have a bond. Though I do feel it is quite rushed. I mean, Thoit literally said, you two probably should not be, more than maybe 5 feet away from each other, which is something they're already breaking. So I don't really know where that's going to go. The Godfrey storyline, I'm very intrigued by. I like this character of Godfrey. I like that he is gay, but no one really knows he's gay, especially in the time period. That's something that you could get whipped for, or something like that. I mean, you could be enslaved for that. You could be cremated for that. I mean, there's so many bad things that could happen to Godfrey, but I like that we have this character, and I like that he actually has a bond with Delaney. It gives Delaney someone to talk to that doesn't absolutely despise him, and I like that. I like that that Godfrey actually cares about Delaney. He doesn't want to kill him. He just makes the rest of the team thinks that, and that's something I do like. Apart from that, though, there's really nothing that interesting happening. All of Delaney's visions and things that he's seeing and the trinkets that he keeps finding are very quickly becoming very formulaic, and I think very tedious. We don't need to have 5, scenes where he's finding trinkets, or a 5-minute scene where he's finding this. It felt extremely unnecessary. I don't know why the show is so intense on telling us, oh, Delaney's having visions, oh, Delaney's seeing this. It's starting to become very, very annoying, and every time it happens, I really check out, because it's very easy to tell what's going on. I don't know why the show, if they would just take maybe 15 minutes to give us a flashback of what Delaney went through and then have us relate to him, it would be a lot better. But because the show is so focused on, this character's hiding this, and let's have this character have a secret, and no, we're not going to tell you this, we're not going to tell you to the end, it's just making it such a slog to get through, because we know absolutely nothing about 99% of these characters. I mean, what do we know about Stuart Strange besides the fact that he was Delaney was his pupil, and he made Delaney go through a lot of things that Delaney wasn't okay with? Nothing. That's it. That's all we know about Stuart Strange. The rest of the men, I don't know anything about them. Wilton, who's that? Appleby, I don't know anything about any of these characters. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they want. There's not a single thing I know about any of them. There's not a single interesting thing going on with them, and that in general really is very severely lacking in that department. They're supposed to be these compelling group of men who have all these different, ideas and thoughts, and there's really no basis for why they feel this way. There's no reason why they're targeting Delaney. There's no reason why we get why against they're Americans and things like that, but other than that, they don't have characters. There's nothing driving them, and it really is starting to bug me. And yes, I know it's only episode 3, but again, there's only 5 episodes left. You have to look at this as this is an 8-episode series. Not a season, a series. This is a mini-series, remember. There's 8 episodes to tell this story. And so far, we've gone absolutely nowhere from episode 1 to episode 3. All we know is that there's an assassin, that Thoit is after Delaney, that a million other people are after him. He now has to protect Lorna. He has this man who's pining for him that he obviously doesn't really, care much about, except that he kind of wants to be close to and get him on his side. Other than that, we know absolutely nothing. We really know nothing. Zilpha and Thorn, I could not give a shit about. They are as bland as a piece of toast. There's not a single interesting thing going on with them. I don't care that Zilpha can't have a baby. I don't care that Thorn is in such disdain that she can't have a baby and is so frustrated about it. I'm frustrated with this show. I'm very frustrated because it could be so much better. This could be a highly compelling, addictive drama, but it's not. And it's just such a slog to get through. But because of those two things, it is keeping me from watching it. I am still going to continue watching the show because there's 8 episodes. If there wasn't 8 episodes and there was like 13 episodes, oh no, I would have checked out by now. There's no way I would have stuck around. But because there's only 8 episodes and there's only 5 to go, I might as well stick around because there's really not many more episodes to watch. So I might as well see where this is going to take us. So far, I'm really not that enthralled with the show. I'm really not that into it. It's slowly losing me by the minute, I have to say. And besides those two things, this episode was very, very boring. I was very hard to pay attention to, honestly. If Lorna or Godfrey was on, I was watching it. But if that didn't happen, I wasn't really watching it a lot. I wasn't really into what was going on. But overall, guys, most guys saw this episode. I am going to give Taboo overall episode 3, a 2.5 out of 5 or a C-. This show really needs to get its act together. It's really losing me by the minute. It's not doing anything interesting with its characters. It's not utilizing its acting. It could be such a more compelling show, but it is instead focusing on secrets and how do we make the show more risky and addictive, and not focusing on really playing to its strengths, which is what the show should be doing. But hopefully in these last 5 episodes they will finally realize what they can do, and hopefully that will make the show at least somewhat worthwhile. And if these two plot lines do actually drive the rest of the show, then maybe we could be getting to something interesting. But until the show actually, puts its focus on those two characters, it's going to take me a long time to really stay into the show and really question, not dropping it. So overall, guys, most guys saw this episode Taboo. Let me hear your thoughts on it. Do you guys checking out the show as much as I am? I hear many people are checking out. I did hear episode 4 gets better, so I am definitely looking forward to watching episode 4. I hope that it does get better. I'm very doubtful that it will, but that's just because episode 3 was so boring. I'm hoping that episode 4 is somewhat better. I don't think you can make a more boring episode than episode 3. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Victoria, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.